And let me share my screen. Everyone see my screen? Hell yeah. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go over dog breeder, okay? So dog breeder is a function. Whoops. And this function takes two things. It takes a name and it takes an age. And what we want to do is we want to return an object that has a name property that is the name and has an age property that is the age. So right away, I'm just going to do return object name, whoops, name, age. Now, before I go into the depths of this problem, let me just point something out to you. Name, right? So that means I'm going to have a key name, and it is the variable name. However, this is kind of annoying to write twice, right? If I'm going to be having a variable that has the value and the name is going to be the same as the variable, I can actually just do this. I can actually just do that. And this is shorthand. So you could just do curly brace, name, comma, age. And what JavaScript will say is key name, value name. What is name? The variable. Key age, value age. What is age? The variable. Okay, so this is shorthand. Is everyone okay with that? Cool. So the main part is like, okay, well, if the person who calls this function wants to make a dog, but they can't think of a name or age, we need to give default name and age, right? So I can do like if name is undefined or if age is undefined, but I can also just say name equals Steve, right? Age equals 0. Now we have a third case to worry about, right? Well, I mean a second case to worry about. What if they just give the name? So if I just pass one thing into here, it will always be captured by the first parameter. Always, okay? If you don't pass in a second thing, that means this will be undefined. But this will capture whatever it is, right? So we can set up a simple if statement, right? How can we tell if the person is just passing in the age? Well, they're going to be passing in a number, right? So if name, if type of, nope, type of name is equal to number, what do? We can say age is now going to be equal to name, and then name is now going to be equal to Steve. Because they didn't pass in a name, so that has to go to the default name, right? But they did pass in an age, so we reassign age to be what name was, because name had that number. Does that make sense? Any questions on dog breeder?
Sorry, why doesn't the default being Steve like kind of cancel out that if statement?
Because if the type of name is a number, right? That means I'm passing in 5, right? Let's say I pass in 5. This only takes into effect if I'm not passing in anything, right? Like if I pass in one variable, that means name will capture that variable. So that means this doesn't take into effect because I passed something in. However, since I didn't pass in a second variable, this does take into effect and assigns age 0. So if I pass in 5, name can't be Steve because I'm telling name to be 5, right? I'm passing in one number, one argument, right? And that's captured by the first parameter. However, I don't want name to ever have a number. So I make that check here just in case. If it's a number, we can just say, okay, they meant the age to be this, right? So I'll just say age is name because name is that number, and then I'll just change name to the default because they didn't pass that in, right?
if you wanted to pass in no name but the age, could you just put the parentheses nothing and then comma 5, or would that work?
Wait,
no?
Say that again? Sorry.
If you wanted to just pass in the age without passing in a name, is there a way to do that correctly when you call the function? Can you just
when you call the function?
So when you can you do parentheses nothing comma 5?
You can do I don't know about nothing, but you could do dog breeder undefined 5, right?
Okay.
Because this is just going to be undefined, right? So you could do that.
Okay.
Cool. Well, I think you can. If I do cool. So if I just do this, yeah, this is a syntax error.
I ran it with just a 9 in parentheses in console log, and it pulled up name Steve, age 9, with no undefined, no comma, just the 11 in the brackets.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's fine.
Right.
But we're still doing this check in the function, right?
Yeah, so you don't have it doesn't have to be undefined, comma 11. It'll just default to Steve.
So you're saying if I just do this, it'll still be Steve? No.
No.
Yeah. But that's what we're trying to figure out, right? We're trying to see if we can call this with this without making this check in our function to properly call our function. You know what I mean? So if we do undefined like that, we have Steve 11 like that. Okay? Any questions?
So just so I understand, it's if you, so if within the function you kind of define the key value pair, which we are doing.
So here,
then when you spit it out, yeah, you can just, like you said, you could just do shorthand like that.
Yeah, I can do this, but this is a pain in my ass, so I do this.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The thing is we have to take into account if they only pass in a number, which is why we make this check. Otherwise, we can take care of our default cases like that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool?
Wow.
All right. Let's continue. So now we will do const attendance check. And this is going to be a function, and this is going to take in a day, okay? So, let me copy and paste this in here. Because you were all working with this, right? You were all working with a classroom. Right? Whoa. This is a big, scary object, right? So, but is it actually an object? No, it is an array. Classroom is an array of objects. Those objects have one key and one value, right? The key would be a student's name, and the value is an array. What's inside of those arrays? A lot of objects. Those objects have one key and one value. The key will be the day of the week, and the value will be a Boolean based off of if that student was there or not. So what we need to do is we need to find, this function will take in a day of the week, and we need to return an array of students who were there that day. So this is just kind of how do we how do we check all of these values, right? So immediately we should be doing let present students equal to an empty array, because this is the thing that we're going to be returning, right? Everyone with me so far? So now, obviously, we have to loop through classroom. So I will set up a for loop like this, right? Because we have to loop through classroom and we have to loop through all of these students, right? So, and we start at I and go to classroom.length. So now, what will class, nope. What is classroom at I, right? What will classroom at I be? It's gonna be this object, right? Which represents a student, correct? And when I is 1, it will be this one, correct? Cool. So then we could pull this out and set it equal to student object. So now I know what we're talking about. This problem, this like represents real data, right? This is data. And this is why sometimes pulling out certain values and storing them in variable names is really helpful, okay? Because now I know that I'm dealing with the student object as I go below, okay? So now that I have the student object, how do I get the student name? I can do this. Is going to be equal to object.keys and then bracket 0. Object.keys is going to return an array of all of the keys, right? But we know what these objects look like. They only have one key. So that's why we can only do of 0, because there's only going to be one thing in the array. And this is going to be the student's name, okay? And now, what is that thing that we're looking for? The value will be the attendance array, right? So we can do let attendance array equal a student obj at student name, right? So this will be this array at that point in time, based on I. Is anyone confused why this is the student object, why this is going to be the name, and why this is going to be the array? Speak up now. Okay, cool. So, now that we have all of this stuff, now that I have this array, right? Now that I have the array, that's what I actually have to loop through. I have to loop through this array so I can check every day of the week, right? So now I have to do a for loop inside of our already for loop, right? So we'll do for let j equals 0. J is less than attendance array dot length j plus plus, right? So now we're going to be looping through this array, right? So how do I get this? It's just going to be let day obj is going to be attendance array of j, right? At that current time in j, we will get our day object, right? And the key will be the day, and the value will be their attendance, if they're there or not. So now I can say, let day name equal to, let me get rid of this space, let day name equal to object dot keys of day obj of 0. The same thing I did up here, because we're dealing with the same kind of thing. We know that there's one key, and that's the thing we're looking for, so we pull it out with object.keys. We pass in that object. What it returns is an array of keys. Since we know there's only one key, we know there will be only one thing in that array. So we access that with 0. And that will be the day's name. Now that we have the name, we can check something. We can check if that current day name is equal to the thing we're looking for in the first place. If day is equal to day name, what can we do? We can do if day obj at day is equal to true, or I can just say day obj at day, then, because then we're just looking for truthiness, right? Then we could do present students dot push. What are we pushing? Student name, which is up here. Then all the way at the bottom, we return present students. So, I make this if statement to see if this is the current day we're on. Since I know that this day is the day we're looking for, once I enter the if, I go into that day object, and then I access that day, since I know that's where we are in the loop. We will never get into here unless the current day is the day, okay? In the solutions, you would have seen an and statement, right? And day obj at day name is equal to true. Or if it's truthy. And then we could get rid of this inner if statement. Any questions?
Yeah, so this is the one that I was referencing in the Slack. I was wondering if you could also walk through the object.entries that the solution video was talking about, because I wasn't sure if I understood what he was doing.
Well, I don't know about that solution, but basically what object.entries does is like if I console.log object.entries, well, I won't pass in classroom because that's a bad example. If I do like let person equal name Marco, age 25, and I do console.log object.entries of person, what I get, what object.entries returns is an array of the key value pairs. It's an array of arrays. All the key value pairs are stored in an array, right?
Oh.
So we have name Marco here is a key value pair, and here it's represented as an array, with the 0th index being the key, and the first index being Marco, right? The value. Does that make sense? So if I passed in classroom, this is going to look bad, but, you know, it'll be accurate. So we have this one array. Oh no, classrooms is an array. Oh, that's interesting. I guess you can pass arrays into object.entries as well. So what you get here is an array of the 0th index will be this object. The first, that's interesting. I didn't know you could do that. The first index will be this object. The second index will be this object, right? So you can just imagine how you can plug this into here, but I mean, I don't think it's beneficial to go through that.
Sure.
In my opinion.
I just didn't understand what he was doing, so I'll look into that. But,
no, for
okay,
sure.
Thank you.
But object.entries is very black and white. Like, what you put in is what you get, right?
Right.
Like, if you pass in an object, what you get is an array of the key value pairs. Always.
Okay.
So, like,
yeah, thank you.
I guess you can do that instead of object.keys. You can do...
Yeah, that's what he was doing, and I didn't understand why.
You can do object.entries, pass in student obj, right? Student obj. And then since this is going to... So student obj will be this. And this is going to return an array of arrays. So we'll do of 0 of 0. Because if I have this object, right? If I pull this object out and set this equal to person, right? When I do object.entries of this, I have an array of arrays, right? So of 0 will be that inner array, right? And then of 0 again will be the 0th index, which is Jessa. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Because what this returns will be an array. It'll look like this, except it'll be inside of an array, in another array.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? So then we could go into it, get the 0th index, which is that array of the key value pairs, and then go into that array and get the 0th index, which will be the key.
Okay, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how that works with object.entries.
Thank you.
No problem. I think object.keys is nicer to write, though, than this. Since we know that there's going to be only one thing. Any other questions?
I mean, sorry, the other one is the other thing that I put into Slack, which was...
Yeah. I'm going to go over that in a second.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, never mind.
That's more of a general thing. So, any more questions on this question specifically? Nah? Alright, whatever. So, let me comment this out. Sure. Comment this out too. Okay. So, you guys might have noticed something that's called the spread operator. Okay? So, the spread operator is ... What does this really do? So, do you remember how, like, let's say I'd let array equal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And I say let array copy equal array.slice, right? This is how we make a copy, right? So if I console.log array copy, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Instead of doing this, I can make a new array. And then, inside of this new array, I can spread out array. So what we get is the same thing. So the spread operator, think about this, it literally takes that array, removes the brackets, spreads out all of the everything that's inside of that array, and you have those values. And as you see, I'm capturing those values with another array. And I can also do this. I can add 6 onto that new array as well. And I could add 0 before it. So, what would happen if I did this? Error. This can only be inside of an array, right? Because think about it. What I'm doing is I'm removing these outer brackets. And what happens when I remove those outer brackets? I have 5 numbers. Can you set one variable to 5 numbers? No, you can't, right? It has to be inside of an array. And the same thing works with objects, okay? Objects is the same thing. Like, oh. Right? Same thing. And if I wanted to add another property, I can do like criminal false. Right? Same thing. Works the same way.
Could you do it without the ... Because I thought the screen that he was sharing didn't have the ... for the
No.
object.
No. So if I just got rid of this,
Yeah.
then this is just going to be an object with a person key, and its value will be that object, right? Because this will be the same thing as person. So the spread operator is that. That is the spread operator, the ... That is what spreads it out.
Okay. I'll rewatch it because maybe he. I don't know what. Okay, I'm gonna rewatch it because I thought there was not a ... in what he was putting in the solution video.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
this is the spread operator. Before you watch it, maybe like play around with it on your own, see what you can do, what you can't do.
Mhm.
But basically, like, you know, without if I didn't want to push a 6 into here, right? If I didn't want to push a 6 into here and I wanted a new thing, I could just do this, right? A new array with the old array spread out, and then I'll add a 6 in the end. It's just another way to do things. This is ES6 though. Okay? Everyone cool?
So what's the spread operator like good for?
For
Like
this.
what's it used for?
For making copies.
You can use the spread operator in a parameter too, right? Like in a function.
Yeah. I don't want to get too much into that though.
Okay.
Like, yeah, you can basically do like when you define your function, you can just do like ... args, and that'll be like no matter how many. I think you can do that. Yeah, you can do something like that. I don't know. I don't really. I never do that though. So you know, got to look into it myself.
Is there, when you go back up into your solution for the last problem, is there a way to demonstrate, deconstructed assignment in that problem at all?
Let me see. Not really.
Okay.
Like, like deconstruction's kind of like right. So basically what I'm doing here, this is what I call like array deconstruction, right? So example I know is an array. I know this array has these two values in it, right? At 0 and 1. So I say const an array with what I'm going to be calling my new variable, what I'm going to be calling my other new variable, is going to be equal to example. What this does is it takes whatever's at 0, puts it in here. Whatever's at 1, puts it in here. And these are values that I can use outside. And it's just like that. This is fancy. You don't have to really worry about this, though. Right?
Yeah, they used it in the solution to one of the problems in the video.
Oh, okay.
That's fine.
All right.
Yeah.
These are all like fancy tricks. Like I don't know. I feel like you shouldn't be preoccupied with this or the spread operator if like, you know what I mean? There's other things to like strengthen that are more important. You know what I mean? In my
Tell
opinion.
that to the solutions guy. He pulls magic tricks.
Hey, that solutions
Yeah,
guy.
I mean, I think what's confusing is, I mean, I think as we were all saying, like, it's good to watch these solution videos to figure out other ways of doing it. So I hope it's okay that we're asking you these questions because, I mean, in the video he says stuff like this will be very important going forward.
It will be when you graduate full stack, but not like right now. So like this solutions guy, if I ever see him, you know, I'll give him a little bah on the head, you know what I'm saying? But no, I mean, it is good though to just, I think it's always good to introduce complex things just so you're aware that they exist, you know?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
later on, if you're like, you have your head underneath water and you're like trying to breathe, thinking about all these like servers and databases, whatever, when you're in full stack, you know? And then someone's just like, hey, you know the spread operator? You're like, no, stop. I don't want to hear about that right now. I need to focus on this. But if I'm telling you about it now, you're like, oh yeah, I did hear about that. Like, let's talk about it a little bit, you know? It's just sometimes it's better to hear things earlier. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, is it okay though? Like I mean, if there isn't enough time, it's totally fine. But going forward, if we also encounter like what he's saying, can we raise these questions?
Sure.
Okay.
I've never watched the solution videos, so just keep that in mind. If
Yeah,
I'm a little
totally.
rusty, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Sounds like you have some homework, teacher.
I'd rather quit this job than do that. That's called too much effort. Anyways.
To be fair, in general, I think what I would probably be asking is like, what does this mean? Not like how does it factor into the solution?
No, for sure. Yeah.
Just,
So
like,
that's what I'm trying to do, right? So I'm just trying to show you, like, yes, this is not a scary thing. It has a very they're all black and white, right? Like there's no magic, no tricks, right? So this is just how it works. You can think how you can destructure things in here if you wanted to. I don't think it's like worth our time right now since we still have to talk about methods.
Yeah.
But also like with the spread operator. Spread operator I think is cool. I do use the spread operator a lot. Object.entries I never use. Like why would I do this if I can do this? You know what I mean? Like things like that. I guess this is cool if you just want to make something an object into an array. But like what's the point? You know? I mean, there's a time and place for everything, but some things in JavaScript, honestly, like some things you just won't use sometimes, but they do exist. But sometimes you won't use. You just never use them. You know what I mean? It's a lot. All right. Any final questions? All right. So we're going to be talking about methods. So object methods. So what is a method, right? Like what is that? What is a method, right? So let's say I have const my obj. No, let's say I have const person. I'll go back to me since we're all familiar with this, and I'll say name is Marco. But let's say I didn't want to tell you my age. I wasn't comfortable with that, okay? I wasn't comfortable with that. Instead, I had to write a function that would determine my age. So instead here, I can write a method inside of here. So what is a method? A method is literally a function that lives inside of an object. And you've been using methods all along. Index of, slice, to uppercase. These are all methods. And I've hinted at this before, right? When I say methods are actually functions. Like, think about it. At the end of a method, what do? You invoke it. What else do you invoke? Your functions, right? There's a reason for this. It's because methods are functions. Where they live, though, are in objects, okay? So index of is a method that lives on the global string object and the global array object. Well, in their prototypes, okay? Don't worry about prototypes, but I'm just saying, okay? So we can actually, when we make our objects, we can actually make our own methods. Like get age. this is going to be equal to a function, right? And what this function will do, it will return year, right? We'll do year minus 1994, right? Because that's when I was born. So when I call getAge, and I pass in a year, the current year or whenever, we'll know how old I am, right? So how do I call this function? What about, how do I call this function? getAge, just like that. And I'll pass in 2020. And what do we get? Oh. See, if you forget commas, everything breaks. We get 26. Ah, that's not right, though. I'm 25. Whatever. I'll be 26. Any questions on this? I can even do this outside of this, okay? I can do this outside. So I can do person dot add last name is going to be equal to a function, an anonymous function, that will take a last name. I can reference that object's properties inside of these methods. So I can do person.name plus equals space right? So when I do person.add last name and I pass in Listenek, down here I'll console.log person. And what do I get? Marco Listenek. And you see getAge and add last name have functions. Any questions on this? Any questions on this? Does this make sense? If objects can hold any type of value, why can they not also hold functions? Suddenly, in my opinion, I feel like objects become a lot more powerful. You can store all of these functions inside of an object by their name and then do person.this, person.that, do all these things, okay? My opinion, this is very useful. So now let me talk to you about a certain
Marco?
Yeah.
Could you have added a key pair with last name rather than adding it to name?
Yeah. So instead of doing this, I can do person.last name is now going to be equal to last name.
Okay, thanks.
So now here, right? Make sense? I'll keep it like this though. So, wait, hold on. Let me just make sure that I didn't miss anything. So, right. So let's say inside of my person, I wanted to write another function. Okay? Let's say, yeah, I guess I'll do it like this. Let's say I'll say greet. Right? And this is going to be a function, and it'll say right? So down here, I can do person.greet, invoke it, and I'll get, hello, my name is Marco Lisak, right? Because I add the last name here, right? So it'll be, hello, my name is Marco Lisak. However, there is a certain keyword that is very complex that we weren't going to get into too much in this course, and you probably won't be asked about it on the entrance exam. But there is a certain keyword that has a lot of different properties, and it's called this. So this is actually a reference to the object where it's inside of. So when you reference this inside of a method, what this is referencing is the literal object. So as you can see, if I do this again, I get the same thing. Because this is person. This is referencing the same object, person. Not a copy, not all the key values, the literal same object, okay? So, can I change this out here, even though I defined it out here? Yeah. Any questions?
Can you use the this that you just did because you had person.add last name in the name of the function?
Well, I'm gonna show you something right now. I can do this outside of here because of this function keyword. So, what if instead of doing it like that, I used a fat arrow? Would the result be the same thing? Listenek is gone. And this is the other major difference between the function keyword and the fat arrow, okay? Where you define a function with the fat arrow, the context of this is passed down to that function. So, where am I defining this function? I'm defining this in the global scope. I'm defining it in the window object. What would happen if I console.log window? No, wait. I don't think I could do this here. Console, I'll just do console.log this. It is a gigantic object, okay? This is the global window object, as we call it, okay? So, what if I did this dot name? Undefined Listenek. Why did that happen? Because in that global object, there was never a name property. But when I call this function here, I'm saying this dot name is going to now be equal to what it was, which was undefined, plus a space, plus the last name. So I get undefined Listenek. I can do this here. So if I go back to a function here, and I greet, I get my name is undefined. Why is my name undefined? I thought I can do this here. Did I get something wrong here? because I define this inside of the object, this, even though it's a fat arrow, should be referencing me. Huh, but it's not for some reason. This shouldn't be happening. Wait a second. Can you just not do this? I thought you could do this though. That doesn't make any sense to me. Let's do some research together. Yeah, but this value of the enclosing lexical scope is used. Arrow functions follow the normal... Huh. Why doesn't that work then? Because I'm defining it inside here. If I refresh... Well, this has gone terribly wrong. Like, when you define a function with the arrow keyword, they lose their track of this. Oh, maybe it's because... No, this should still work. Well, I guess it doesn't. So, basically, when you define functions with arrow keywords, they don't have a this context, right? So it uses like one level above, I think. But I was pretty sure that it would be defined inside of the object. It would use the object's this context because I'm defining an object here. I still feel like I'm right, even though it's not showing that. I feel like something wrong with the REPL, maybe. I don't know. But basically, that is another difference between the function keyword and the fat arrow. Okay, the context of this. Okay. But if I use the function, as you can see, this is literally a copy of person, right? It is literally like this.name is person.name. It is the same object. Any questions? HackerNoon is also a good website for like research, I guess. A lot of people post articles on here. No, this is stupid. All right, never mind. Okay, any questions for real?
Hey, Marco, you've lost me. Could you explain again what the difference is between the regular function and the arrow function?
So when you define a regular function like this with the function keyword, we have a this context. Like what this is the object person. Okay? That's what this is. It's literally a copy. However, if I do this with an arrow function, it loses what this is. What this is actually this global window object. Let me try something else. Like if I do function hello equal function hello, and I'll move this inside here, and then I'll do return person. Nope. Person. So when I do let example equal hello invoked, and then I'll do example dot greet, nah, it's still messed up. Alright, forget it. Forget it. So basically, what I was saying before is that this no longer has a context of its own object where it was defined, right? It doesn't have like any knowledge about this. All it is accessing is the global object. Because if I don't do this and I console.log, this out here in the global scope, what we get is the window object. Right? What we get is the window object. And it is a gigantic object. And that's kind of what happens. Otherwise, with the function keyword, we can use this keyword very smoothly. What? Are there so many? What is this? My God. Yeah, okay. This is just REPL freaking out. I feel like there's something wrong with REPL right now. Anyways, so that's that. Any other questions?
Yeah, can you talk one more time about, so I think from row 107 to 109-ish, just one more time why that this works. Why that this thing works down there when like this is actually, I don't know, like because it's,
because of the function keyword.
Right.
Because the function keyword passes down the context of this because we're accessing the person.
Okay. So it is because the person is there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
No problem. Well, actually, if I didn't do this, and I did function add last name, whoops, and I did person.add last name equals add last name, I'm pretty sure this would still work. Well, if I add Listenek, yeah. It's because of the function keyword. Like, you put this whole thing into person. Right? You put it into person. So when you run person.addLastName, it looks into that function and it says, okay, what is this? since it's the function keyword and since it's inside of the person at this point, because that's where I put it, right? Then the this context is with the person.
But it's always using the most recent object reference.
Yeah. It uses, with the function keyword, it uses the object where it resides, where that method resides, okay?
And in this case, it's going to row 111 or no 130. Sorry, I think I'm just trying to understand, especially because we took person out of like row 107 now, what the thought process is of how like it's still able to like kind of tie this to the person this.
Sure. So person is just an object, right?
Yeah.
Which we define here. Now I'm just going to define this add last name function, right? And what it does is it says this dot name plus equals space plus last name, right? Now I'm going to say, okay, person, I'm going to add a key, okay? That key is going to be last name. And I'm going to assign it to this function. This function is defined with the function keyword. So when it goes inside here, when it goes in here, and we call it, the this is going to reference where that function is, where that object is, right? Because it's inside of that object. It becomes a method of person, so this references the object that it resides in, right? Because after this point, after line 111, we reside inside person. Right?
Yeah. So without row 111, it would not work.
Well, without 111, person wouldn't have an add last name key
Right.
at all.
Yeah.
So we would just get a reference error here saying add last name is not a function. Because what is person.add last name if I don't put it in there? It's undefined. So you're trying to basically invoke undefined, right?
If you printed out the object now, would the add last name function be part of the object?
Yeah.
Okay. So actually what we did is we put that function into the object, right?
Yeah. On line 111, yeah.
Yeah. So it would be the same as if we had typed the object with the function in it, but we just did it after and added it back into the object that already existed.
Right. Any other questions? Where is this console log coming from? Oh, it's console log this. Any other questions? All right, let's get into methods. So we'll talk about what a method is, creating, accessing, and running, and an introduction to this. So methods are actions you can perform on a value, and we've been using methods throughout this course, like index of. These methods are built into JavaScript, so we don't actually have to define them ourselves, right? So countries.index of Brazil, we will get what? We will get 2, right? Because that's where the index is. Everyone good so far? So these are methods, right? We've been using methods. Creating a method is actually really easy, and we can do this. Consider this object, let Grace Hopper equals first, last, rank, right? So we have first is Grace, last is Hopper, rank is rear-admiral. So objects can hold any type of value, including functions. If we add a function to this object, that function is now a method of the object. That's all it is. That's all methods are. They're just functions, okay? Nothing scary. So if we create a method, we could do my method, just like any other key value pair. My method key is going to be this function, console.log, I'm from a method. So when we call Grace Hopper dot my method, we get I am a method, right? I'm from a method. Does this make sense? All right. Methods on an object generally should perform an action that's relevant to the idea or concept represented by the object itself. This is true. You don't want to have a person object and then have something that spits out random numbers. It's like, why are you doing that? That should just be its own function. That shouldn't live inside of the object. So here we have say quote, and we'll say a quote from Grace Hopper, right? It's easier to ask forgiveness than it is to get permission. Const Grace Hopper's .say quote, and we get that. Does that make sense? Okay. So here we have another thing that I showed you, right? This getAge function. So it takes in a year and it returns year minus 1906 when Grace Hopper was born. So getAge 2018, when this slide was made, we get 112, right? What would her age be in 2020? 114. That's not funny, really. Okay, let's give Grace a greet method too. So we have greet function name, and we have hi name, I'm Rear Admiral Hopper. Greet will work, but it's a bit redundant to type out Grace's rank and last name twice in the same object, right? So hi Karen, I'm Rear Admiral Hopper, right? So we can do gracehopper.rank and gracehopper.last instead, right? Hi name, I am gracehopper.rank, gracehopper.last. And we get the same thing. Hi Gabe, I'm Rear Admiral Hopper. Does that make sense?
Shouldn't those be pluses, not commas, in the console log?
We'll say that again?
Shouldn't in console log, hi, shouldn't it be hi plus name, plus I am, plus Grace Hopper?
No, so you could if you wanted to make one string. However, console log, so if you're thinking about methods, log is a method on the console object that's available to you. So log is a function. So log takes all of these things, right? It takes as many arguments as it wants. So these are all different arguments, and it literally just logs them out one by one. What you see in the terminal is, it looks like one string, right? But like, it's actually, you're passing it in. And I could do plus this, plus that, but you know.
Where does the space come from in between like Gabe and I then?
Oh, I mean, it just puts a space there in the terminal.
Okay.
Like that's what the console log does, right?
Okay.
Like if you console log like two variables, there'd be a space between them. Otherwise, if it was all in one line, you were trying to console log a million things, it would be unreadable, right? Any questions? Okay. So JavaScript has a keyword this, and you can use it to reference the object in a method. So we have this.rank and this.last. Hi Kate, I am Rear Admiral Hopper. It's the same thing, right? This is literally Grace Hopper. It's literally Grace Hopper. That's what this is in this situation, okay? This is literally just another reference to the Grace Hopper object. So if I say let returned object equal gracehopper.getThis, what is getThis? GetThis is a key in here, and its value is a function, and what it does is it just returns this, right? And we say returned object.first, returned object triple equals Grace Hopper. Grace, true. Right? Because it returns this, what are we returning? We're returning itself. It's returning itself. That's what it's doing, right? So we get Grace and we get true, because these are the same thing. Make sense? So let's take this calculator example. So we have a calculator, and we have num1, which is 20, and num2, which is 30. So now we have a sum key, which is a function, and it returns this.num1 plus this.num2. And then difference returns this.num1 minus this.num2. So calc.sum, calc.num2 equals 15, console.log, calc.difference. So the sum should be 50, right? But then we say calc.num2 is going to be equal to 15. So then, when we console.log the difference, we should get 5. Right? This makes sense, right? Any questions? There is a lot to this. This is very complicated. As you can see, I got confused before. But, you know, JavaScript is an object-oriented language, meaning objects are, and their methods play a key role in most production JavaScript code bases, right? Really, everything in JavaScript, when you're making applications and you're making things, everything is really an object, okay? So the this keyword is going to be really important, to, like in daily use, right? So we're only skimming the surface on this and object methods in this course. Lots more to learn as you progress, okay? So, any questions? Any questions? Good to go? Oh, geez. Yeah, I feel like